Welcome everybody to the show today. I'm glad you guys are here. This is going to be a awesome live stream. Okay. So last week I was talking to Andy Schectman. We were talking about Operation Sandman, and it's something we've kind of talked about off and on.
Grainger knows that if you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional grade products and next day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
All right.
Or just stop by. Grainger, for the...
Okay, where's that audio coming from? Do you guys know?
Nope.
That was really weird. Okay, I think we got that fixed. Okay, so I don't know where that audio was coming from, guys. Anyway, let me start over again. So I want to welcome our guests here today. I've got Andy Schectman from Miles Franklin. I've also got Bo Polny from Gold 2020 Forecast. And today we're going to be talking about a lot of things. We're going to be talking about the brics to a degree. We're going to be talking about gold and silver. I think we'll probably talk a little bit about crypto as well and touch upon that, but also about Operation Sandman. Is this a real risk? Is this something that we should be preparing for? And how can we prepare for it? So I brought two of these experts on, and I want to hear from you guys. So leave us a comment in the comment section if you guys have any questions, and we'll do our best to try to address some of those towards the end. And also put that into caps so that we can more easily see that. So Bo, Andy, welcome to the show. How are you guys today?
I'm good.
Good to see you both. Bo, been a long time. Good to see you too, my man.
Yes, God bless you, Andy. I've listened to you sometimes, and boy, if there is one man on this planet Earth that knows more about the financial system, hats off to you, Andy. The stats you have in your that you can just rattle off the top of your tongue. I gotta keep some charts sometimes. It just comes out of you.
I appreciate you, Bo, very much. It's nice to see you both, and thanks for having me here, Jay.
I'm excited to have you guys here. So, you know, this has been a subject that has been of interest to me over the last year or so, I think, Andy, since we started talking about it. And then I saw Bo had a video on about 10 days ago, maybe 11 days ago or so. And that kind of spurred me, plus it was already in my mind, kind of thinking about, hey, could this happen? We have all this talk about bonds going on right now. We're starting to see China drop down as far as, you know, their position and how much percentage they hold. And so as we started seeing all that, I'm like, oh my gosh, we probably need to start talking about this again. We need to look and see, you know, what the real risk is. So Bo, tell me a little bit about what are you seeing out there in the marketplace? You know, what are you hearing, as well as, you know, what are some of the things that you have, you know, kind of seen as far as the patterns starting to happen?
You know, I look at the world a little differently than most people. Like Andy, it's fun to have Andy here because he knows statistically, he watches the details and all the numbers of what's happening financially. So it's really fun to take, and it's super interesting to listen to the hard numbers of what's happening and the events transpiring current day. And then I look at it more and I add what's called timing of cycles. So I'll look at the timing of events. I also, the unique thing of what the Lord's revealed to me is I tie in biblical prophecy and timing with what's happening in the world. And right now it's pretty wild because there's so much prophecy right now and things that are being spoken, and all the numbers are lining up and the events are lining up, if that makes sense. So it's really interesting to see the pieces all come together. And honestly, it's just the world we live in right now from a financial perspective. This is the biggest joke that we can possibly imagine. You know, they've created so much money, and Andy can expand upon this, but the money creation has been exorbitant over the past, you know, since the 70s. Okay. But in the past 5 years, it's gone off the charts. Look at the real estate market. Like if nothing changes, our kids there's absolutely zero way that the children of this generation are going to even be able to possibly own a home, because in the past 4 years, pretty much right across the entire United States, the home values have at least doubled. And there's nothing better about the homes are not twice as good, but the money supply has gone so exorbitant. And what that means, it's literally, it's like money that was chasing a home in the 70s. So numbers, just a couple numbers for you. It took 100 years from the Federal Reserve start of it to 1970 to make the first billion. Okay. Then from the 70s, when Nixon took us off the gold standard and the petrodollar was created, we're in the quadrillions. So what you need to understand is that's so many zeros, it will blow your mind. And so that's the point, is the reason homes have exploded in value. Where in the 70s, they were 30 to 50,000. That same home today is what, maybe 500,000 minimum, probably $1 million plus. So the money creation is so stupid right now that you can't even be rational about this. And so what I'm looking at from a charting perspective, from a biblical perspective, we're at a biblical point. Something's about to go here, and it's going to be great for those who've been listening to Andy, great for those who've been listening to you. Great, because they're going to be positioned for the greatest financial move in human history. That's what's coming. We're at the doorstep of it. It's going to go down. I feel in my heart, it's going down this year. It's going to be the greatest move in human history. And those who are wise, who are listening to us, who are blessed to be positioned and have found Andy and have found you, just be positioned for this event, is going to be just the greatest day that the world's ever seen. At the same time, this is going to be the worst day in human history for those who had no clue, for those that thought all of us are crazy. Because when the financial system changes, it's going to be devastating, because it's just going to be the clash. It's going to be, two worlds collide. This is not going to be like an easy where it's, all the banks are just going to say, oh, we're there for you. The banks are not there for you. We saw that in 2008. You saw what the banks did to you in 2008. Those who had mortgages, they were just stealing houses left, right, and center from everybody.
Yeah.
Well, and 6 months before that, they were lending to your dog. This is the world that we live in. It's a total scam, total fraud. And that's why, we're here talking about precious metals, honest money. That's been money for 5,000 years. Andy, take it from here.
So Andy, what are your thoughts? I know we've talked about Operation Sandman. I know we've also talked about just the need of having precious metals. We've even talked about the bonds recently and what's going on there. So, whether it all happens in one day, which Bo's saying we could have it all happen in one day, or it happens, gradually, little by little by little, and then all of a sudden, what are your thoughts?
There's so many things happening, you guys, and thanks for the nice, kind words, Bo. I appreciate that, and right back at you, man. The BRICS thing has cooled off a lot, but kind of like what you said, Bo, I think people have a hard time getting out of the way of what they never see coming. And even the people who were aware of the BRICS have turned away from it because of the time. It's been easily dismissed, but the pieces are being put in place now, in fact, are already in place. And they've done so in a very cunning manner, to where I think they will out-accentuate people's expectations. Let's just put it that way. We can come back to that. I know we're going to talk about that, but there's so many things happening here in the States as well. You got you have a stock market, as an example, where the insiders are moving away, the Warren Buffetts of the world, and the Jeff Bezos and the Jamie Dimons and the Mark Zuckerbergs. They're all selling. The insiders have been selling. Buffett's sitting on $500 billion in cash. And last week, we saw the largest volume, retail volume, in like an hour or two of $4 billion the market's ever seen. And the retail public now makes up 36% of the trading volume on the stock market. That's 3 times the historical average. That's not good, because the retail is typically the ones that get left holding the bag. 50 billion in inflows on the retail side since April 8th. And that's record amounts, as the institutional traders are retreating. And that's a scary thing. Of course, you got the downgrade by Moody's, which to me doesn't mean a whole lot. But what I found interesting about it was their debt to GDP projection of 134% by 2035. Now, that doesn't take into account the unfunded liabilities, or we'd already be north of 200%. But there have been studies done that there has never in all of history been a country that's crossed the 130% debt to GDP ratio. Japan is the only one right now, and they're well north of that, and the jury is still out, but you can see their bond market is imploding right now. But no one's ever come back from that line without either hyperinflating or outright defaulting. And at the same time, you have, an administration that came here with Doge and aspirations of normalizing our fiscal irresponsibility, and yet they're raising the debt ceiling. Elon Musk said, well, I tried, but more or less Congress has stonewalled me. And that's not just the Democrats either. And so we have an indebtedness problem where we're taking in $5 trillion in tax revenue each year and spending $7 trillion. So that doesn't work. You're continuing to destroy the value of our currency, to make other countries move away from the treasury market. And that's something else we should talk about too, because as our debt keeps going higher and higher and higher, and President Trump would like to see lower interest rates, and they've lowered interest rates, since he's taken office. They've tried to lower interest rates. And what do you see? Last week, we see $20 billion bought in 3-year treasuries by the Fed, $34.8 billion bought in 10-year treasuries by the Fed, and $8.8 trillion in 30 treasuries bought by the Fed. This means weak demand for long bonds. Foreign buyers are pulling back. The Fed has to come in and monetize. These are all very, very bad things. At the same time, Japan's bond market is doing the exact same thing. And you look at a system the people are involved in, Bo says people will be run over by this. They will be. Bank of America is sitting on $700 billion in bonds that they bought in 2020 at 1%. That's $100 billion right now in unrealized losses. Not to mention, we need to refinance $9 trillion in treasuries this year, $28 trillion by 2028. So let's go to 2028 for a moment. We take in $5 trillion in tax revenue. Times 3 to get to 2028 is 15 trillion. Well, we're halfway to what we already owe, those bonds that are coming due, these short-term bonds. That doesn't take into account the 2 trillion per year in deficit spending. So we're broke, we're insolvent. We can't even, in essence, come up with enough revenue to pay for the treasuries that are coming due. At the same time, you see China slowly selling treasuries. They are now number 3 behind the United Kingdom, who is the second largest holder of our treasuries behind Japan, who has already come out Japan and said that selling those treasuries is certainly on the table. And you look at the United Kingdom, one of the largest debtor nations on the planet, buying the debt from the largest debtor nation on the planet. It's 2 drunk guys holding each other up. And so it doesn't work. And then you see the United States become a net importer of gold to a degree that no one has ever seen before, month over month over month over month over month. In fact, if we look at this last month, I'm going to give you the exact numbers here. The exact numbers are the May gold. I'm just going to read this to you. The May gold contract will go down into the books as the highest physical delivery for an inactive contract in COMEX history. 25,401 contracts have been delivered. Multiply that times 100. And that's how much gold in ounces has been delivered. But an interesting thing that I read today was that 526 of those contracts as of today are open and undelivered with 1 day to last notice. Now, that tops the prior record set on January this year for an inactive contract. But what's interesting is that those 526 contracts might be the highest ever left standing with 1 day delivered. And basically what that is insinuating is that there is a short that does not have the metal to deliver. Usually there's only 1 or 2 or 3 contracts left remaining at this point. When you have 526 times 100, right? So a lot of ounces, 50,000 plus ounces that have not been settled yet. That means there's a short who probably won't default. They'll come out and find that gold, hopefully. But it's an indication of the cracks that are appearing in the COMEX market when massive deliveries are coming into COMEX, and this has never happened before. So I guess I would just simply say that you're looking at a rush to physical gold, a move away from treasuries by the foreign nations who have been our biggest creditors, and a move away from equities by the big money, the insiders. At the same time, the retail investors are pouring in record level hand over fist. What could possibly go wrong with that? So yeah, I mean, I'm not bullish. I wish I were, but I'm not. Last thing, how about this one? Currently, the top 10% of American households account for half of all of the retail consumption. So when you talk about this being a strong economy, my asset's a strong economy. You got the top 10% buying everything, and the bottom 90% are struggling in an environment where we're told inflation is under control. It doesn't seem that way to me, as the cost of living just seems to be going higher and higher and higher. So yeah, lots of crazy things that are happening around us, no question at all. And lastly, I would like to say thank Governor Ron DeSantis in my home state of Florida. Yes. Here on July 1st, 2026, will be the third state to officially recognize gold and silver bullion as legal tender, with no sales tax on sales, and even authorizing payment systems such as PayPal to transmit funds in gold and silver. So things are moving in ways that really we've never seen, from legalizing gold and silver to our creditors moving away, to the institutions moving away from equities, and the big retail investor now being the largest participant. Lots of potential points of interest and potentially of let's just say concern.
Well, Andy, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I've got a lot of those concerns too, especially when at least some gold's coming back to the United States. We don't exactly know where it's going or what it's being used for, but I kept watching it this last year. There's no gold coming back. Why is the Fed not buying gold and all these other central banks are doing it? Like, are we just setting ourselves up for a major catastrophe? And it seems like that could be happening.
Yeah, I believe this administration said to President Trump exactly what you said, that everyone else is buying gold. We're setting ourselves up for a catastrophe. We need to do the same thing. We need to do this, or we're in big trouble, because there's the old saying, as Trump said on Easter Sunday, the golden art of negotiating. He who has the gold makes the rules. Well, we didn't really have much before November. Certainly hasn't been audited since 53. They still haven't audited it. They've been talking about it. But the bottom line is that you can see there's a concerted effort to onshore gold, where it's going, who's buying it, at the levels that it's coming in for clients, because these banks like JP Morgan swears that it's not for their house account, that they deliver for clients. The March contract was $4 billion. The last month in May was over $5.3 billion. So who's got $10 billion nearly to stand for delivery? I mean, and let your mind percolate on that. These are highly unusual events. I've never seen it in 35 years in this industry.
So, Bo, where does this fit into everything? Do we have 10 years to start accumulating gold and silver and we can wait? Or could this be happening much sooner?
Like listening to Andy, it's phenomenal what he's saying, but basically, you've got the equity markets, you've got the stock market, you've got the dollar itself involved in this, and you got gold, and all the money's starting to move into gold. We've got gold now over $3,000, and then you got people like, hey, maybe I should take some profits because gold's at $3,000. So it's heading towards another thing that might go to 4,000, and so. All I know is the last people in the world you want to listen to is mainstream media, because if they're telling you to sell gold, it's because they're buying it. If they're telling you to buy gold, it's because they're selling it. So it's less important to listen to what anybody says in terms of the mainstream media, and listen to people like us. At least we'll look at it from a charting perspective. Let me pop this chart up here on silver if you want to put it up. But this is actually the U.S. dollar chart. It's very interesting. This is the dollar chart, the U.S. dollar, the Federal Reserve money system, going back to the year 2015. This is a long time. So when you look at this chart, you go all the way, and it basically broke through 100. If you see that black line, it went up, broke through 100.5, and it traded above that zone since, what was that, 20, can't see here, I think it was 2022. So it broke through it in 2022, and it's been above it since 2022. Now, the wild part is the last month in April, it fell below and it closed below support. So now, if you understand charting and trading, support becomes resistance, which means that in the month of May, which we're in right now, we're not, the likelihood of the dollar moving back above that 100.5 is next to zero. In other words, it ain't going up. And so we right now we're seeing gold at 3,000 plus 30, like the last was checked 32, whatever it was, 3,200 and change, approaching 3,300. So we've got it getting, so it's over solid 3,000 for a long time now. And the US dollar broke below support in April, which means it ain't going higher because it closed below it in April, which means it came up, it did touch it just the early part of May, and now it's back down below it. So what the chart's indicating is the dollar's going to heading down. The problem here is the dollar itself, because of what it's done, and it broke that support, the next target is way down here. It's what is that? I think it's like around 80 something or other, but it's a full-on collapse. So the cycle for the dollar indicates it's going not a little bit down, it's going straight down when this event happens. So there's an event coming in the near future where the dollar is going to plunge, because the chart is actually indicating it's going to go straight down. And I think, yeah, the level there is 89.2. That's where the next support is. So this is wild what we're looking at right now. And so we've seen Bitcoin break vertical. Bitcoin finally has been locked above 100,000 for the past, few days here now, maybe a week or two. So it's finally above 100. Gold's at over $3,000. And the only thing that has not broken vertical yet with power is silver, because it's the last thing to move. It's the only thing that the bankers will forever suppress. And what does that mean, suppress? Well, if you consider the ratios are actually incredible. Right now, if you take the price of gold and divide it by the price of silver, you're going to find a ratio of about 100, which is incredible, because for the 15, 20 years that I've been following gold and silver, the ratio might on average be 70-ish, sometimes 80. In the crash of 2020, it went down 120 for like a blip, and then it shot right back up. Within a week or a month, it was back in the 80s again. So what I'm saying is, for the past month now, we've seen, this is crazy, gold's at like 3,200 and silver is at $32. So think that's 100-to-1 ratio. That's insanity that we're seeing that kind of ratio, because if you understand ratios, the gold to silver ratio should typically when you dig, so those that do the mining, so if you go dig up gold out of the ground, you'll get silver with it, and you'll roughly get about 10 ounces of silver. Some people will say 14, whatever. If it's 14 or if it's 10, it's not 100. So right now the ratio is 100-to-1 gold to silver, which is just, it doesn't make sense. In other words, they have manipulated like Andy was talking about, the manipulation of gold and the fake numbers out there. Understand that silver is 10 times more manipulated than gold is right now at 100-to-1 ratio. That's absolute insanity and craziness. This is something we've never seen in history. And again, as I said earlier, we've seen it. We saw it go to 120-to-1 for like a blip in the crash of 2020, and then it went straight back up. But now it's been sitting at 3 digits to that of gold. So this is probably the greatest time point in history on a consistent level to be, I'm not giving financial advice, but literally you could take an ounce of gold right now and get 100 pieces of silver. That's craziness. Versus in the normal market, those mining it, they would dig out an ounce of gold, but they would only get 10 ounces of silver. You see what I'm saying? So the mathematics of the ratios, everything's indicating we're at a critical mass. Something's about to blow. The biblical cycles are indicating that 2025 is and will be, I believe, the year of Jubilee. That means financial events like you can't imagine, were the flipping of the financial scales. And so the explosion of silver through $50 is going to be in a single day. That's what I believe. And that only starts the greatest bull market in human history. Okay. So we've got Bitcoin on a bull market. It's sitting above 100,000. Gold is sitting easily over 3,000 consistently already for quite a while. And silver is the only thing that hasn't blown vertical yet. And so it's the last horse out of the race, out of the gates. But when silver gets going, watch out. It's going to go faster, harder than anything you've ever seen. It will outperform Bitcoin when silver gets going. It's going to be historic to watch.
Well, and to your point that you made earlier, Bo, too, it's hated, right? Silver is so hated. You go into different chat rooms, you go onto X, there's a lot of people that just hate on silver, even the people.
Well, wait, let me pause you on that and expand upon why they hate it.
Yep.
Because where's the hate coming from? And those are the same people that hate Bitcoin. Those are the same people that have been poo-pooing Bitcoin and said it's dead for the past 10 years, but it's resurrected 300 times so far already. See, so when you say they hate it, I'm just going to clarifying, they is the ones that work for the bankers. Please continue. Are we there?
Yep, I'm here. So we're just grabbing something to show you guys real quick. So
okay. So when we say they, it's literally the people that create the numbers, that make the numbers, and these numbers are just an absolute joke right now. It's la la land. It's the freakiest thing you could ever see. Who would ever believe that you can buy 100 ounces of silver for 1 ounce of gold? Like the math is just so crazy. And then what Andy brings into the equation of all the numbers of all the deliveries that people are taking right now, and yet gold's only $3,000. And the chart that I showed earlier from 2015, we just saw the US dollar break support in April. Okay, so 100.5 is now resistance in May. And it went up, it touched 100.5, it came back down, and the next target is like 89 on the US dollar. So right now we've got, and when that happens, you're going to see silver blow like you've never seen before. Gold's going to go crazy. And so those are projecting, the analysts, the they people were the ones saying, gold could be at 3,500 by year end. Are you kidding me? When this thing then goes down, you're going to see gold go through $3,500 like a hot knife through butter through 3,500. It's going to shoot through 4,000 like a hot knife through butter when the dollar starts to plunge. So it's going to be historic to watch. And again, they're fighting tooth and nail to not let this event go down, because this will be the death of them. This will be the death of them. And that's why they hate silver, because it is the one strategic metal. And expand, but that golden dome that Trump was talking about, how you make it? You don't make a golden dome. That the strategic military dome for the United States, it's made with one alloy, and it's called silver, the same metal that was used to make the atomic bombs. That's why they hate it. They don't want you to know the truth about it.
Well, and even Andy's brought up in the past too that in a Tomahawk missile that it has about a monster box worth of silver. So, we use it. We use a lot of silver.
Yeah, no question about it. And to me, there's no question but that the military industrial complex is holding down the price of silver. I mean, there is absolutely zero doubt in my mind. And it's interesting that BlackRock, along with JP Morgan, is the primary custodian of SLV, the world's largest silver trust. I've been told by a gentleman who works for the Department of Defense who actually helped design the Tomahawk. He said all of the cruise missiles, after going back and he came to me at a conference in Vancouver and said, well, I designed cruise missiles. I know there's a little bit of silver, but I don't think you're right with how much you're saying. And he came back to me a year later and said, I'll be damned, there's between 13 and 14 kilograms in every typical cruise missile. And that's just one facet of high-tech weaponry. In 1942, and this has nothing to do with making the atomic bomb, where we use so much silver, but in 42, they talked about as much between 100 and 200 million ounces a year of silver were used back then in military equivalent or equipment. And they used to publish at military demand, and the supply demand numbers, they're not there anymore. So you look at a company like BlackRock, who owns all of the military contractors. They build the high-tech weapons that need silver, so they suppress the paper price. and then they blow up countries like Ukraine and get the reconstruction contracts, that being BlackRock. And so it's a game that they've played to enrich them, so much so where you look at the LBMA, who is trading 3.5 times annual global mine supply every day, as much as 3 billion ounces per day. They claim to trade 290 million per day, but they say those numbers are 10 times understated, as they only post the final settlement numbers. We look at the May contract also, which is a active delivery month, and there's somewhere just shy, I think, of about 15,000 contracts that were delivered. I haven't looked since last week. Last week it was just shy of 14,000. My guess is it's somewhere between 14 and 15. If it were 15,000, you're talking 75 million ounces of silver. Who the hell's taking possession of 75 million ounces of silver? So even back it up and say 65 or 70 million. I don't know what the exact number is for the final numbers. But you're talking record amounts. It blows away the all-time record. And at the same time, we saw last week that about 16 million of those ounces were delivered from banks to non-banks. It was the third largest sale in history as of last week by banks to non-banks for a single COMEX contract. That means you have family offices and sovereign wealth funds and manufacturers. And it also, to me, signals that the institutions are kind of getting out of this game as they're selling off their position or closing out short positions by delivering. It's a full-blown scramble for real metal, whether it be gold or silver. And the price is a tool of misdirection. And the only way that you can continue to manipulate a market is to push it in the direction that it is going. But there's massive deliveries here. There's massive deliveries all around the globe in silver. Eric Young, King Kong on X, is phenomenal. And he said, have patience, silver stackers. China's going around buying everything they can at these subsidized prices, using the West subsidy to accumulate everything they can because they're thinking in terms of generations for their future. They're the same country, the second largest producer in the world, that's going all around Asia. I mean, South America, in particular, Peru, buying up all the doré and the concentrate. Now, why would they do that? Doré is a crudely refined bar, as we've talked about before. Concentrate is a sludge byproduct of the mining, paying double what the West will, sending it back to China to refine it, not just in silver and gold too. But why would the largest producer of gold and the second largest producer of silver, if price was really indicative of value, be going out of their way to not only stand for delivery across the board on all this stuff, but also to go around the world and buy unrefined silver, disintermediate the market, and send it home? And if you look at what the price is on the Shanghai market right now, yesterday, I think I have the price from yesterday. Let me double check here, just to give you an idea of where did I do with that? Oh, here we go. To give you an idea of how they incentivize arbitrage. They had yesterday the price of silver in, let's see, I got to make that bigger because I can't see that. What does that say? Let me make this bigger. In Shanghai, the price of silver was 35. Come on, where'd you go? Sorry. 35.69 yesterday in Shanghai. So, you know, they're paying a pretty hefty premium for people to send them their silver to capture that arbitrage. But I promise you, it's not coming back home. So as Eric said, have patience. They're playing the long game. We play the stupid game to enrich the military industrial complex, to allow them to make weapons to continue their game of perpetuating war. But the Chinese are saying, okay, well, we'll play the long game with you. We'll stand for delivery. And in fact, we will incentivize anyone stupid enough to deliver us their silver at a very handsome premium. And thank you very much. It won't come back. And by the way, we'll buy up all the concentrate and doré and send it back for refining in China. It's a long game. People don't have patience anymore. You know, Richard Russell, my mentor, said if you make 7% a year, you will go down in the Hall of Fame of investing. And you know, that just doesn't cut it anymore. It has to be instantly and make big money and have no patience and don't play the long game. And that will be the downfall of of the West as it pertains to commodity accumulation. And maybe by the grace of God, we have a new administration who is at least keenly aware of the mistakes that we've made by suppressing the price and allowing the world to accumulate these commodities. And maybe, just maybe, they are trying to to fix that problem by standing for delivery themselves. So we will see. But I would not give up on silver, and I would not look at the price as a determining factor. I mean, it's maddening as hell. Don't get me wrong. But in the end, as as Bo was saying, that's why you would see that massive spike, because it will just go from available to not. And when it goes to not, you'll see a delivery failure or some sort of systemic event that could massively impact the silver price, as Bo was saying, all at once. So
Andy,
I don't discount that at all.
If you kind of imagine here, this is 10 ounces of silver to 1 ounce of gold.
Right.
Okay, and that's how it's coming out of the ground. And if you can get 100 of these right now versus one,
Keith Newmeyer will tell you it's 7 to 1, and that it's come down that much from 16 to 1 for 5,000 years. He says it's 7 to 1. He says that publicly. He used to just say it to me privately when I would see him. He's now saying it publicly, 7 to 1. But whether it's 7 or 10, you're right. The 100 to 1 represents, I don't know, 1/5 of 1% of time throughout as far back as you can go. It is an anomaly in historical sense. So to Bo's point, it's the value of a generation. It truly is. But it doesn't mean that, look, it's been irrational for 2 years now. It should have come down a long time ago. But that's the central banks that are buying up all of the gold. Now we see a rush by many of these other central banks to silver. So I would expect what Bo says to come to fruition. But how it all plays out is anyone's guess. I just think you have to play the long game, just like the BRICS nations are at the same time.
Definitely. So, Bo, do you have anything else on your chart that you wanted to share with us?
Okay, absolutely. Yeah. If you want to pop this screen up, this is actually something that I found. I think I found it on X. I'm not sure who did this, but it's pretty interesting. If you look at this, right? So you've got the ratios from 3 to 1, 9 to 1, 2 to 1, 10 to 1. This goes back 4,000 to 5,000 years. 15 to 1, 15 to 1, 11 to 1, 10 to 1, 15 to 1, 10 to 1, 12 to 1, 105 to 1. Okay. It's called Clown World. What I'm trying to show is this is just stupidity that's going on right now. This is so stupid that you can't, there's no, as Andy says, there's no better word than stupid. That's what's going on. This financial system is completely stupid. And that's why I look at it from a little different perspective. To me, it's just, they're going to play this game. They've played it from the case. So you go to Declaration of Independence, that's 248 years. Do you understand? They will play this game for another 100 years, for another 200 years. They won't stop. That's the point. I kind of, when I do my podcast and those that listen to me, what I want the world to, people, the viewers to understand is these people, they're globalists. They're not going to stop. And what, like Andy says, the long game. The long game is they're not going to stop. And the long game is to control humanity. That's what they do right now. The fact that they create so much money out of thin air, it creates a bondage system. It creates an enslavement system. That's what all of this is. It's literally about bondage, enslavement. They're controlling everybody right now, and they're controlling everybody through the monetary, through the financial system. So if there's ever going to be a day, it's going to be a day where we see a biblical event where God actually, the world's going to find out that, number one, there is a God, and that God is going to step in, and that God is going to actually restore the covenant, because America was founded under God. You have to understand that, okay? The founding fathers, they came in here on the Mayflower, they got on their knees, and they dedicated America to God. And so you've got the globalists, which basically is Brazil, Russia, India, China. But for the most part, the main player right now is China. China is the main player in this to take down the United States. That's their objective. And let me ask you a question. What's the best way to take down the United States? Let's think about this. And Andy was beautiful in what he was talking about, because he said two words that were key: long game. Okay. So what's China's long game? Their long, if you can Google it, I did it myself. China's long game is to be the world superpower by the year 2049. This is not a secret. I Googled it. I'll show you the slide in a second, but this is a factual statement you can find on the internet. They've stated their long game. But who is the world superpower? The United States. Okay, so the United States, we've been governing the world, taking care of the world, preventing communism from around the world. We basically try to keep the world a safe place. Could you imagine China being the world superpower? Just think about this for a minute, okay? Right now, China's got the credit score system, okay? This is not the FICO score. This is the credit scoring system where they literally monitor your tweets, your posts. If they listened to us and we were in China, they would shut us off and shut our bank accounts down. They would shut everything off. They would just turn us off and throw us in jail. That's what happens if you live in China and you speak truth, okay? So China is all about communism. Could you imagine? Please think about this. China as the world superpower, it would be nothing but a world communist nation. The world would be full-on communist, period. Because that's what's going on right now in China. Oh, you don't believe me? Put on the video, it's on a link right there. Pop the screen up and Jared, play this. This is incredible. And I would love to see. This is who is the spokesperson for China? Soros. That guy couldn't be more crooked than you could ever imagine. So this is George Soros, what he's saying about America, its money system, and what position it's supposed to be. Listen to his words right here. This is sickening to listen to George Soros speak.
Yeah, Bo, if you can go ahead and hit play on that.
A decline in the value of the dollar is necessary in order to compensate for the fact that the U.S. economy will remain rather weak, will be a drag on the global economy. China will emerge as the motor replacing the U.S. consumer. But China will be the engine driving it forward, and the U.S. will be actually a drag that's being pulled along. And that would be the adjustment that it needs to be accomplished.
That will be the adjustment that will need to be accomplished. Is this man sick or what? What is wrong with this dude? This guy is nothing but working for China. Do you understand? Listen to what his words were. He says China will become the motor. That means that if this is a train, so China's pulling the world. They're running the world. This is the sicko who Soros is. And that's why you got to be, we talk about Operation Sandman, because you got to understand the BRICS are tied in with all of this, because BRIC, China, right? The C stands for China. And so if this comes to fruition, it's the China long game, and they're going to try to use the BRICS to bring all of this in through fruition. That's just the bottom line on the plan. This is China's plan to take down America. Well, wait a second. Let's just see what happened. So we just, all this is coming out already right now. So wait a second. Wasn't the Biden family, who was paying them off? Who was paying them? Who was paying all the politicians? This is all coming out right now. We're seeing, that's why they don't want, this USA ID to come through fruition. Why? Because when you follow the money, you just follow the bank account numbers and you see where it came from. And guess where all the money's coming from? China. And you can also see where it went. And that's the huge problem, because now we're finding out all these politicians and the Biden regime, all of this money was where it was coming from and where it was going. And they cannot let the truth come out, because the truth will destroy them. And so now this is a clash of the Titans that's about to go down here in Washington and the United States. That's what's happening. If you want to pop the screen on for a second here, but this is the research right here. This is research, please verify, but it's China's long game, and it states right here, China's grand strategy to displace American order. China's long game strategy goal particularly is to ambush to become the world's superpower. And you just heard what George Soros was saying. So tell me that this does not disturb anybody who is listening to this. This is what their plan is. It's just disgusting. And so the BRICS right now, if the BRICS were to attack, and this is going to, so Operation Sandman, in my heart, I believe is going to happen, because I showed you the US dollar right here. It broke through support. So the US dollar right now broke support in April, and which means that there's a rule in charting: support becomes resistance. So what we've basically seen right now is on this chart, so the support of 105 is now becoming resistance. And so we're basically seeing the US dollar, zoom in here, the US dollar right now, it came back up in May. This is from April, but it closed below support, which means the target now is a plunge on the dollar down to somewhere in the 89 range. So how this plays out, God knows, not me. I'm just telling you, BRICS plan is to take down the US dollar. Okay. And they've stated it right through George Soros. You heard it with your own ears. Okay. And they're going to do it through the BRICS system. The BRICS system is a parallel system to the US dollar. If the dollar, and again, I'm not opposed. We all, in a way, want the Federal Reserve note to collapse, okay? But we don't want the BRICS financial system to now take control of the world, because now you've got communism going global. That's the net result of this. And that's why God has positioned Trump to have him in office right now. Because when this event goes down, here's the prophecy: the BRICS will crumble. The BRICS will crumble. Their plans of world domination will crumble. And then this is the secret of how this is going to play out. Trump will step in, and he will open the doors to Fort Knox. He will show that the United States has got an immense amount of gold, and he will therefore not use the Federal Reserve, because they're a bunch of crooks and thieves, okay? He's going to come in at some point. This is what the prophecy is. He's going to restore the gold standard in America, not using the Federal Reserve System, but I believe it'll be backed by the Treasury. And so he's going to show all the gold, expose the gold, show us that he who has the gold makes the rules. And that's the prophecy on how this is about to play out. And so those who have listened to us are going to be blessed beyond measure. When this event goes down, forget about getting silver. It's just going to be gone, gone, and gone, because it's just going to be blowing vertical to prices you can't even imagine. But all of this is prophecy, because none of this otherwise makes sense. None of what's going on in the world makes sense, because this is a financial system that wants to control humanity. You've just heard George Soros declaring what his plans are to work with China. You know what China's plans are, the long game. All of this is about controlling the world. And so if we don't have something biblical down here, this is not going to play out well. But the reason it plays out well is because the United States has got a covenant with the founding fathers. They made a covenant with God. And we ain't going down. The United States ain't going down. No matter what China's plans are, no matter what George Soros' plans are, no matter what they plan, we're not going to go down. And those who have been blessed to listen to your podcast, Jared, to listen to Andy, to listen to myself speak, those have been positioning themselves financially and holding God's money, precious metals, silver and gold. They're blessed beyond measure. This is going to be historic. And that's why Trump actually declared the golden age. He actually stated at his inauguration, the golden age. Do you understand? Then this is the wild part. This is the wild part of this. There is a video, I'm not going to play it right now, but Trump had a video that he did 3 years ago. And he said, beginning on May 26th, 2025. So he did this when he was being persecuted, attacked, legally attacked, wasn't president. He stated that beginning May 26th, 2025, Memorial Day, we start the progression into the great 250-year anniversary for America, which would be July 4th, 2026. And this is the wild part. So that was 2 days ago. He had a speech on Arlington Park. And that speech at Arlington Park, it actually started the 404-day countdown, Air 404. So it's interesting, but 404 days. So today we're at 402 countdown. We're in the countdown clock to America being reborn as the greatest nation in the world. And he actually finished his speech yesterday at Arlington Park that we will be the greatest nation in the world. And so we're right now in the 404-day countdown, started 2 days ago, Memorial Day. So something's going to go down. The US dollar is set to collapse or drop size. Again, the nice dollar, I mean, Federal Reserve note, which is a fraudulent system created out of thin air. And those who understand finance, I guess someone said it, if you don't understand history, of finance, you're going to be subject to experience the same thing everybody else has. 1929, there were people that saw this great event coming and they got out. I think Andy was saying that all the big money's out of the they're out of the markets right now. They're sitting in cash. Why? Because they know something's afoot. Okay, something's about to go down. And again, the day this is going to go down, it's all everybody's guess. But there is a calculation for 40 days and 40 nights, which is this weekend. Interesting. I don't know if it's going to happen. This weekend, May 31, is 40 days from the death of the Pope. That's a biblical calculation. Does something happen? I don't know. I'm just saying everything's pointing to something going down. Operation Sandman is their plan to take down the dollar. But it doesn't matter what everybody's plan is because Trump's in office. And I'm telling you, he's not going to bow down to China. He ain't bowing down to Russia. He ain't bowing down to anybody. And when push comes to shove, I'm telling you, and I'm sure Andy can attest the same thing, Trump's going to step up and he's going to show the world who knows most about finance.
So I got a question for you, Andy, on this then. 2 questions. Okay, so we don't always know when these things are going to exactly happen. Sometimes Bo has been really good at looking at dates and times when events can happen. We don't always know what the event's going to be. I am seeing a lot of indicators that are pointing to, gold and silver being a very secure way for your future, and a way to shore up things like real estate, any investments you have in the stock market, other things like that. It's a great hedge. I even think it's a really good hedge with crypto. I do have some cryptos, but those could have issues down the road as well. But I think they're a great way to accumulate additional gold and silver and to add to your stack. I also have gold and silver, but I'm continually adding more silver right now, more than I am gold, just because of the ratio is so high. So looking at that, I don't know what the odds are, Bo, of it happening this year versus next year, but to me, it looks like we're in that time frame. We're in that season of something happening. If that does happen, Andy, what are some of the ways that you would recommend for people to get more prepared for this? When you look at gold and silver, and the other thing I'll just kind of throw out, if you could talk to a little about it as well, is the importance of having relationships with LCSs, importance of having relationships with companies like Miles Franklin as well, to already have that established well before these kind of events happen, and to start preparing for it. Do you have any recommendations around those lines, or maybe some thoughts around, how to start getting ready for it?
Yeah, I'll answer those 2 questions, and then I'll give you a little bit of how this could happen very quickly. To me, you buy gold eagles and silver eagles, period, if you can, or pre-33 gold coins. But I mean, to make it really simple, gold and silver eagles. And when you get states like Florida and Oklahoma and Utah passing legal tender laws, 2 of the 3 states, I believe, specifically mentioned gold and silver eagles. I don't believe Florida does. Any sovereign mint coin, I believe, is what they say. I'm not positive on that, but much of the legislation around these propositions for legal tender status center around not just American eagles. Some do. Some say any sovereign mint gold or silver item. To me, right now, the gold eagle is as cheap as I've ever seen it. The primary distributors are bidding, or let me put it to you this way, backdates. I'm selling a backdate gold eagle right now, which could be 2024, mint condition for $20 to $30 less than I can buy a 2025 if I spend $25 million to buy those 2025s. I mean, so the value in gold eagles right now is extreme. It's the same thing in reverse as the public has rushed headlong into the risk on trade again. as the institutions are moving the other way. We're seeing record deliveries for gold, but that's at a higher level. The public is missing all of this. Can't get out of the way of what you never see coming. And so the public has kind of completely missed this move that the big money has been making, including the record deliveries. When you see record deliveries that coincide with record repatriation from the Bank of England and the New York Fed by over 40 central banks saying, we'd like our gold that you've been holding for us. We don't care that it gives us direct access to the LBMA, the Bank of England holds it, or to the COMEX that the New York Fed holds. Thank you. We trust you guys. It's been great. But you know what? Give us back our damn gold now. These things have, you can see that they're setting the chessboard. And, you know, we talk about BRICS. I think it's important to, I may have mentioned this with you, Jay, recently. If I didn't, I'm not sure. But for Bo's audience, I think there's some things that they need to pay attention to. I think the BRICS nations are laying the foundation or the groundwork for a new gold-backed system, a settlement system. Basically, what we've been hearing out of the Shanghai Metals Exchange is an initiative to build vault structures in various jurisdictions. And they talk about Hong Kong. China's doing this. In Hong Kong and in Saudi Arabia are the first two, moving out to Southeast Asia, the Asian nations, and into Africa. Now, let's stop for a moment. That, if you put those nations together, that's the Belt Road Initiative, right? That's the countries in Africa and Asia and in South America who are all connected one way or the other to the BRICS. They're not in the BRICS, but they're very, very much connected because of China and the fact that these are all resource-rich countries that are underdeveloped, that China has said, we'll come in, we'll build your roads and bridges and maritime channels, we'll build the gold and silver mines, the oil refineries, we'll help you bring this stuff to market and industrialize your country. Now, just 2 weeks ago, something called the Chiang Mai Initiative was signed, where former adversaries are now aligned. I'm not saying that they are completely aligned, but they signed a treaty that more or less says, and they've publicly come out and said, this treaty is designed and committed to joint reduction of dollar dependence, expanding trade in local currencies, and resisting U.S.-centric protectionism. This Chiang Mai Initiative brings into the equation 10 Asianic nations. These are the Southeast Asian countries and 6 Middle Eastern nations. That's 38% of global trade right there. They've all signed this treaty, right? But the treaty also is that they're all connected to the new renminbi bridge network. Now, that's M-Bridge that we've talked about forever, that the BIS pulled out of. They changed the name from M-Bridge to the bridge. So those countries right now are already hooked up to the bridge technology. They're integrated and they're allowed to trade their local central bank digital currencies cross-border with China, as an example, or other nations, and settle any overage or any inequity in gold. What did the Shanghai Metals Exchange say? We're going to open up a metals exchange in Hong Kong and Saudi Arabia to begin with. So you trade over the bridge network. And remember, before the M-Bridge was dissolved, because the BIS pulled out at the 12th hour saying, yeah, we can't be involved with any countries that are trying to avoid U.S. sanctions. Again, did they just realize Russia was the RM BRICS? I always joke about that. But after 4 years of developing it, their BIS innovation hub with these countries at the 12th hour, they embarrass them. So they changed the name. These countries are now aligned. So as an example, remember, Saudi Arabia was the 5th member that joined to M-Bridge. They know this technology. So they're going to build a gold warehouse in Saudi Arabia that belongs to the Shanghai Metals Exchange. So they will trade over the bridge. China will buy Saudi oil. They'll use a digital yuan. They'll settle any excess in gold deliverable, and it's now multi-jurisdictional. It's not in one jurisdiction that can change the rules. No, there's a vault in China. In Saudi Arabia, you can get the gold. Okay, that's 38% of global GDP. Now, they also said Africa. What's in Africa? The Belt Road Initiative. 75% of human population is the Belt Road, 50% of global GDP. Let's add them into it. And then we hear of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is the largest financial and largest regional military and financial organization in the world. 30-40% of global GDP right there. So you put them in, and then you put the Eurasian Economic Union, all the countries that end in STAN. Now, the president of Belarus has said these two organizations need to meld with BRICS. So all of these organizations, you have the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Eurasian Economic Union, the Belt Road Initiative, and these Asian countries and Middle Eastern countries that have already connected to the bridge, along with the BRICS countries. You're talking damn well near 90% of human population. 3 of the 4 largest nuclear arsenals, more percentage of global GDP by a long shot than the West, the major production of all of the world's commodities and rare earths, the refining of almost 100% of said rare earths, the engine of manufacturing. This is not something to take lightly. But what does all of that have to do with anything? And the point that most people are not talking about, I think I'm the only one who's screaming about this. Vince Lance's talking a little bit about it, and he's talking about the multi-jurisdiction venues that the Shanghai Metals Exchange wants to open up all of these areas and trade over the bridge. He's saying all of this and settle in, trade local currencies that this bridge technology is not compatible with SWIFT. So the dollar's not involved. They trade their local currencies. They benefit and strengthen their local economy and settle imbalances in gold. But what did Sergei Lavrov just say? The goal, according to the head of the BRICS chair in Brazil, is to integrate a new payment system, a new settlement system, not a full-on BRICS currency that everyone says won't happen, and maybe it will in a decade. Not now, but a settlement system. So you trade over the bridge, free from SWIFT, in local currencies, settle in gold, right? That's what they say is the ultimate goal. What did Sergei Lavrov just say, that the Russian finance minister, that this new technology will be open to non-BRIC nations? And you want to talk about Operation Sandman, where every country says bang and drops a dollar, drops the treasuries. If you connect what is in essence 9 out of 10 people in the world, 90% of human population, the majority of global GDP, more military might than the West, more commodity production, refining, the multi-sea and land lanes, shipping lanes, all of it, they would dominate. And now they're all connected to this BRIC technology, this new BRICS bridge technology, because they are opening it to non-BRICS nations. So they're going to open it to the Belt Road, to the Shanghai Cooperation, to the Eurasian Economic Union, to the Asian countries who are already on it, the Middle Eastern countries. Bang, they all settle outside of SWIFT. They settle in balances in gold. And if you do that, now you have connected the majority of the world. Now, Operation Sandman doesn't work if you don't have something like this in place. And where's the news about this from our mainstream, illustrious mainstream legacy media? Nowhere. So you want to talk about people getting smashed by something they never see coming? Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but you can see from a chessboard perspective, if they connect all of these nations, which are already intertwined on various levels, you have now, in essence, sealed the fate, potentially, of the dollar as we know it. And it's not a BRICS currency, it's a BRICS settlement system that is tied to gold. Who's been buying all of the gold? Oh, yeah, all of the central banks of the South and the East. And who has the technology that is already working and integrated all of these countries? China and the BRICS. And you put it all together, and they're closer today than they've ever been. And the fact that the West screwed them by pulling out at the 12th hour and embarrassing them at their meeting in Russia last year, saying we can't be involved with this, we're pulling out and pulling the plug. It was Chinese technology. So yes, the BIS knows that technology, and they probably have it, but China has now changed it from Enbridge to Bridge, and they're bringing everyone in, and then they're going to internationalize the settlement component by opening up warehouses on the Shanghai Metal Exchange all around this network, and then the imbalances are settled and deliverable in gold. You could not draw something up better to enact Operation Sandman. And if all of these nations know what's good for them, they have all their ducks in a row before they pull that trigger. Now, I'm not saying Sandman's going to happen, but when you talk about 100 plus countries dumping the dollar in the treasury all at once, you better have everything set up in order to immediately move to a new system. Well, it is set up right now, and they've already connected 38% of global GDP that we know of. The BRICS are connected, so it's probably more like 50, 60%. Then you bring in the Belt Road countries and the Shanghai Cooperation and the Eurasian Economic Union, and all of a sudden, bang, You've got 90% of human population outside the SWIFT, and there's not a damn thing that the West can do about it other than what they normally do, and that would be militarily. But do you really want to go up against a huge union of countries that are together? I don't know that that's the wisest thing that we've ever thought about.
Well, to your point, Andy, too. I mean, we're talking like it leaves like the G7. That's like what's left out of this thing. And, you know, a lot of people say it can't happen because they'll lose so much money by dumping all the T-bills, basically the U.S. treasuries. The reality is what you've just described, the system set up, it's already backed by gold. That's what they've been buying. The paper dollars don't really matter to them.
Well, it's interesting, too, because the settlement settles in 7 seconds, not the 3 to 5 days through SWIFT intermediary banks. 7 seconds with a 98% reduction. And they specifically say it will not be compatible to the dollar, the pound, and the euro. So that's it. Those three are not compatible with this technology. Everyone else, come on in. The water's warm. So, yeah, you talk about the G7, you talk about the countries. At some point, do countries like Japan choose sides? I'm not saying that they will, but could they? When it's every man or woman for themselves. They've already said, the finance minister of Japan said, dumping the $1 trillion in treasuries is on the table. We may need to for our own survival. So the point of it is that, you know, I'm a patriot. I pray to God every day for this country. I have 3 kids. I thank God I was born here. I thank God President Trump is here. You know, I just this morning, just so people understand, I just played golf at Trump International today and bought this head cover. So, you know, I mean, I bought this shirt that says 45, 47. I mean, this is the first time I've been there where I didn't see the president. I'm all for the president, but I wonder if I were going to push back against Bo, and I hate to do it because deep down, I want what he's saying to happen. These countries may have something to say about that, and we'll see. But let's hope that he's right. Let's hope that this country rises from our ashes. But, you know, when you talk about our indebtedness, over $200 trillion in debt, and it's funny, we say we're 125% debt to GDP, but we exclude the big debt that's off balance sheet. You know, let's hope. I don't know how we pay that debt back, but nonetheless, the next couple of years, and you know, I don't know where his numerology ends up, but if it is July 4th, 2026, I think it is. That's the day that Judy Shelton told me, who was Trump's nominee for the Fed and might actually be the head of the Fed this year. She said flat out to me, Andy, Trump told me on July 4th, 2026, President Trump will issue gold-backed treasuries, 50-year in duration to begin with, deliverable at the end of the duration. And then she said, my hope is that the market will issue stable coins off of that, all of it to benefit the new treasury system. So maybe Bo can chime in on the numerology part of that. July 4th, 2026. She told me he will do that. Now, that doesn't mean he will, but she said it on my interview. People might want to check that out.
Awesome. So, Bo, tell us. Take it.
Yeah, I'll just say this. You know, from a perspective of what I'm seeing, the dollar itself is in a down cycle. Doesn't matter what anybody says, it's in a down cycle, at least into the fall, period. No one's stopping it. That's the cycle that it's on right now, and it's going to be continue downwards. Now, the speed, you know, those are different issues, but it's in the downward direction, which means gold and silver are in an upwards trajectory this year. It's going to have a fantastic year. You know, let's not much my opinions, but let's look at what prophecies are. Like, what is God saying to the prophets? I'm not talking about psychics. I'm literally saying there's a certain people that I know that God definitely speaks through and says certain things. What I'm saying is the dollar is the financial system needs to be different. Okay, so it's called an economic makeover. Okay, that means it's not the Federal Reserve System, because that's nothing but total fraud. It's not the BRICS system, because the BRICS system is nothing but taking the fraud and transferring it to another group of people that now based out of China, and their whole agenda is the same thing: run the world. Okay, so it goes from bad to worse. That's all it is. The BRICS is nothing. They're going to back it by gold, but they're never going to let silver explode. If going to back it by gold, that's great, but gold's going to sit at $3,000-$4,000. They're never going to let gold go to $100,000 an ounce. Because why? Because the BRICS is a controlled system. Got to understand it. They've been planning this for 10 years or whatever. And if it does go live, that's great, for them, but it's a controlled system, no different than the Federal Reserve System. It's a controlled system by man. What we're looking for from a prophetic standpoint is a sudden, unexpected move that nobody can explain, but it changes everything. And that would tie in directly with the thing that Trump actually said on the 4th of July 3 years ago. This is the crazy. He was not in office. He wasn't president. He was being attacked, law cases against him, everything. But yet he's speaking beginning on Memorial Day, May 26th, 2025, which was 2 days ago. We start the preparations for the 250-year celebration on July 6th, July 4th, 2026. Now, this is not a prophecy. It's not even numerology. It's literally Trump speaking it, and he stated this. I'll send the link. There's no point in playing it right now, but he stated this on the record, and then he's in Memorial Park 2 days ago saying we're now stepping into the United States will be the greatest nation in the world. The only way we're going to be the greatest nation in the world is we take down the Federal Reserve System, okay? The BRICS system dies or falls apart, but is not active. And then we, the United States, have our own money system backed out of the treasury with honest money, gold and silver. That's the only way this is going to play out for us to rise as the world superpower. Because if the BRICS rise, we're going to fall. And then you heard what George Soros is saying. We become pulled by China, the engine. Okay, so if BRICS manifests and takes hold, we become a third world nation. So we're the drag on the world. That's what George Soros said. So that ain't playing out because of the covenant made with the founding fathers with God. Okay, this is a biblical spiritual battle. We battle not against flesh and blood, but principalities of darkness. Okay, in dark places, princes of darkness. And I can kind of wrap it up here, but let me just put this video on. And this is actually Kim Clement prophesying. I think it was in 2013. So this is the prophecy, and he actually said the brothers of Goliath stand in glee. The brothers. He said this 10 years ago, before the BRICS even started. He said, the brothers of Goliath stand in glee. We will cripple you. That was his word. So the BRICS nation stand in glee. We're going to cripple you, the United States. That ties in what George Soros just said. We become a drag on the world. Okay, so that's the plan. But then the prophecy goes on that suddenly everything changes. And so this is another video I'll play, but so you want to know when. Okay, when does this financial shift? When does the economic makeover occur? God tells us. Here it is. This is when the economic makeover occurs. Have a listen.
The winds of change have come, changing of the guard is apparent. An economic makeover, and hands who have dug into the coffers and into the treasure chests of deception, their hands taken out, so that my people who conduct their affairs with justice will be blessed, signifying the opening of a door that has been locked for such a time as this. Pandemonium in the White House, in the higher regions, and below the earth, in Italy and in Rome. All of this uncovered, but unspoken of. Look to the fall.
So there it is. The economic makeover that's going to happen, between now, massive shifts are going to transpire as we progress into the fall, and then events are going to happen. The cycles that I'm looking at that I basically see, massive, very sizable financial, and I don't mean dollar, I mean market equity plunge in the fall. That's going to result in therefore fulfilling of this prophecy of an economic makeover. So the charts are set. The time is I believe now we're about to see something here. all the details and how this plays out, nobody knows. Is Operation Sandman a part of this? Nobody knows. But all I know is that we're going to have an economic makeover. All heck's about to break loose in the financial sector. Trump's in office to be there to rebuild the U.S. economy, and right now Trump just set up a $5 trillion deal with Saudi Arabia and in the Middle East. So they're very good friends right now. They have, let's just leave it at good financial relationships with the Saudis right now, who are extremely cash rich right now. Okay, so there's a massive relationship and respect with the Saudis right now. And the Saudis, because we all witnessed what happened on May 13th, 14th, okay? We all witnessed it. And let me tell you, there is absolutely zero, zilch, not a possibility that the Saudis or the Middle East is going to join up with the BRICS. Absolutely no way. After you saw that purple royal treatment, total respect, the Saudi prince meets him at the tarmac. There is zero possibility that the Saudis are going to go be best friends with George Soros and his buddies. That ain't happening. So we're at a very huge crossroads. And as the prophecy said, this fall, this year, let's leave it at, you will be blessed if you have listened to Jared, to Andy, to myself. If you're holding God's money, silver and gold, it's going to be an incredible year for what's about to happen.
Well, that is awesome. I know we've gone over our hour a little bit here. Do you guys have any time for questions?
I got a few minutes.
Couple minutes? Okay. So this is a question that came up that I think is relevant. I think you guys have kind of hit on it, but I think we could probably clarify it just a little bit too. And this kind of goes, I think, Bo, you did a video on this with Saudi Arabia too. And Andy, I think we've talked about it a little bit as well. We basically went on to the petrodollar as soon as Nixon took us off the gold standard. And then we basically came off the petrodollar when the 50-year agreement expired with Saudi Arabia. Are we starting to go back onto maybe a new petrodollar? And then, kind of fitting into this too here is, is the SWIFT system really the culprit that keeps everything, moving, or is it really something else? Is it the BIS? Is it this, the Federal Reserve? Is it Soros? Is it someone else? And maybe you don't have a full answer to that, but your thoughts in that area.
You're talking to me?
One of you. Yeah, for either one of you.
I mean, it certainly is a big part of it. It's just a system that, it's dominated for so very long, and there's so much debt that's denominated in dollars. And it's one of these deals where a move away from that would take a very long time, but you can see it's already happening. To me, it's less the SWIFT system that is really the issue. It's more the issue of the treasury market. There's no demand for, or waning demand for, our treasuries. Net since 2014, there's been no new central bank buying of our treasuries. There has been, but more selling than buying. So it's an issue of who funds our spending, who funds our continual fiscal deficits of $2 trillion plus a year. People have, the numbers are so big. 1 trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. How do we continue to run these deficits and then attempt to have low interest rates? You can't. At some point, there's always going to be a buyer for our debt, but at some point the rates have to go much higher, and that's why you're seeing the 10-year yield go higher. The 10-year yield is so connected to the economy. It's something that they don't want. I mean, it's the major indice for mortgages and credit card statements and home equity loans and car payments, all that stuff. So who's going to continue to finance? And maybe that's why you saw the Fed come in and buy almost 50 billion worth of treasuries in the last auction, because there's less and less and less demand for the treasuries. That's really the big point to me, less the SWIFT system in terms of the ultimate Achilles heel of the West, and more who funds our indebtedness. But yes, the SWIFT system certainly would take a while to break free from. But if you look at the percentage of trade that goes through the dollars, it's been going down and down and down each year. I don't know what it is, 65 or 70% right now, I think, is the number, but it's considerably lower than it once was. But you look at this new payment system that's connecting so many of these nations. Again, it doesn't make sense to break free from the SWIFT until you have something in place. But the new bridge technology, 7 seconds to clear, 98% reduction in fees, not going through the SWIFT intermediary banks, not being able to be stopped and kicked out of SWIFT the way we did with Russia, not being able to take our treasuries, those that, or their treasuries that they bought from us and in essence default on them. These are things that are incentivizing this move away from the dollar, but the SWIFT is part of it. Certainly, it's just the entire system. It's too big to just snap away from. You cut off your nose to spite your face. It will take time.
I think that makes a lot of sense, Andy. And, you know, the reality is we've already seen elements of Operation Sandman just from what you've described, right? There's less that's flowing through there. We're not seeing buying. We're seeing, you know, reduction as well as selling in how much bonds are being bought. So it's already kind of that little by little by little, and then we could have this massive event. My guess is it would be something centered around another event that may be happening as well. You know, something that triggers it that could kind of kick in. Yankee stacking.
Let me add to that as well. My 30 seconds on that is, when you go study history, you'll come to find something very simple and interesting. No currency that's ever been created by man. So man, for 5,000 years, we've created money, different types of money. Gold and silver stood the test of time of 5,000 years, okay? We've made money, you know, for all these different centuries, and no other currencies ever lasted 100 years, okay? We're at 112 years, I believe, since the Federal Reserve System, okay? This is an anomaly, but history says 5,000 years of history states something very simple, that all currencies in time go to zero, okay? So the Federal Reserve, 5,000 years of history will prove, time will prove that we are 100% right, and the dollar will, the Federal Reserve System will eventually, the SWIFT system will eventually collapse. Okay, so it's, and the prophecy is it's going to have 2 haircuts and then collapse. So it's going to be worth less, 30%, worth less again, 30 more percent, and then go worthless, 0. Okay, so that's the prophecy for the next 10 years. That's how this is possibly going to play out. And yes, there's going to be an alternate system of finance that needs to rise up. But my answer to that is the BRICS is not the answer, because China is involved with that. Okay, so as great as the BRICS plan, you know, as an alternate to the Federal Reserve System, it's nothing but another evil. Okay, and that's the problem I have with it, and that's why we really need an honest money system. That Andy was referencing of a treasury system out of the Treasury United States system, and potentially on the 250-year celebration of America. So let's pray it all plays out that way. But we need an honest money system, not go from one fraud to another.
I like that, Bo, because I think that makes a lot of sense too. So, you know, we're not saying if Operation Sandman happens this year, the dollar is going to zero right now. It's still going to be kind of that gradual slope that falls down. And what could be good about that is that could wake up a lot of people.
Well, Jim Sinclair actually said it. It'll the first event's going to be man-made.
Okay.
Okay, so this is Jim Sinclair. He said the first haircut will be a man-made haircut. So it'll be possibly, you know, and the prophecy was 30%, but if a man-made, so man does it. And this will be, maybe they're trying to bring on the Great Reset, flip us over to the brick system. So that potentially, I'm just trying to talk off the top of my head. And the second event will be a natural event, which they can't control. And this is going to be horrific, because that's going to be another 30%. And now it's just like, but the first event takes us off, potentially, I believe, takes us away from the being the world reserve currency policy, or something horrific, at least starts it off at. But the second event is something beyond their control. And that's when that's when it really gets ugly.
He was a good friend of mine. That's exactly what he said, that the first attempt would fail, and the second one, Mother Nature would come in. And he also said to me that, and he said it publicly, so I'll say it here. He told me at dinner one night, Bill Holter and I, and he went to dinner at his house in Connecticut, and he said, you know, Andy, I'm Jewish. I said, oh, it's interesting, Jim. Why are you telling me this? By the way, Sinclair doesn't sound like a Jewish name. He says, no, my last name is Seligman. My father, Bert Seligman, I think he said was his name. He was a commodity trader on Comex, and unwound the Hunt brothers position. He is a very famous guy, I guess. He said he went to Catholic school in grade school and was picked on. So when he went to middle school, he took his mother's name of Sinclair. And he said, my relatives are the Goldmans and Goldman Sachs. He said, I was told that there would be 2 resets. First, man-made, it wouldn't work. And when the second one came in, they would confiscate everything in gold and silver that wasn't American-made in origin. Now, he said that to me. Bill Holter has said that. Bill's my good buddy. They were partners. The fact that Bill has said this publicly, I don't have a problem saying this because it was said to me in private. But whether or not that's true, I can tell you he believed it. He bought his gold and silver from me, and everything he ever bought was American in origin. So be that as it may, I'll let people run with that themselves. He believed it. So can't verify it, but I know Jim did believe it. And he was a smart guy. He was known as Mr. Gold in the 80s.
What I like to say is it's better to be prepared. It's also better to be years ahead of time than it is to be a couple seconds late. I mean, when these things happen, you're toast if you have not prepared. And it doesn't take a lot to prepare for this. Even for someone that's just getting started, start with a piece of silver and start moving from there. So that can definitely happen. Okay, one last question, and then I want to just let people know how they can get a hold of both of you guys. So this is from Yankee Stacking. He's got a large channel in the community, and he's a great mentor for me as well. He says, we definitely have an incoming crisis brewing. As I've said many times, I don't think we make it out of this decade. 2001, 2008, 2020, we are due for another financial crisis with the reset. And then he leaves it with CBDC. So kind of what I wanted to leave on here is we've talked about Operation Sandman. We've talked about the dollar losing its value over the next decade or so. We've talked about Judy Shelton possibly working with Trump, maybe coming in as the new federal chairman head, and starting to issue U.S. bonds and backed by gold. And we've also talked about problems coming in and possibly Trump fixing it next year, right? And maybe that'll be part of the gold part of it. Do you see CBDC still on the horizon? Is that still a risk that we're going to have to deal with, or do you think we're going to be able to avoid that? And you guys may not have an opinion on this either. I don't know.
I don't think there'll be CBDCs. I think they'll use stable coins in place of it, and they'll control the on-ramp and the off-ramp of the CBD of the
Treasury.
Yeah, the Treasury or the IRS they'll watch it. They'll control the on-ramp and the off-ramp of these stable coins. At least under this administration, we won't see any CBDCs. They're trying to do it in other parts of the world, but the digital ID is the on-ramp to this digital surveillance state. If you look at who's got the patents behind it, and it's supposedly for election integrity, that is where they would like to go, whoever they is. And if Trump really is pushing back against it, yes, the legislation to avoid CBDC is huge. But I think we're moving to a system that will be more and more digital and more surveyed. And stable coins can do the same thing without the bad press and publicity that you would get from negative press that you would get from a CBDC, and kind of accomplish the same thing.
Okay, Bo.
I would say this, that when based on that comment, the comment's very, very specific. It's based on the reset. So that's basically assuming that man is in control. You see, so if you run with that comment, then you'd have to continue with being man and being in control, and there's nothing new. Nothing new is going to change. They're going to continue to do what they've done for the past 112 years. They ain't going to change, because we know who are they? Revelation 2 verse 9, they call themselves, but they're not. They're from the synagogue of the other guy. Okay. So what I'm saying is, these are biblical times. And so to assume there's going to be a great reset, the great reset would be the collapse of the financial system. And then we would be pushed into a control. And Andy nailed it. We would be pushed into a control system. Okay. So the great reset would push humanity into a control system, just like I was describing with the BRICS or whatever it was, going from bad to another bad system. So the answer is very simple. If man remains in control, that's the assumption, based on the comment that man would remain in control, then yes, we would head into a reset, and they would push us into a control system, like Andy was saying. But God, that's the problem they've got, is they got God as we're a covenant nation, and no one's going to get me to back down. That God's in control of this, number one. And secondly, is their great reset will turn into the great awakening. And it's going to be horrible for them, because when the truth comes out of all the deals done in darkness, and what they did. And Trump is annoyed. They're not going to be able to take him out, and he's going to expose everything. The whistleblower is going to come out of all the closets, and the truth's going to come out of what they've done. And the people are going to be throwing up to finding out how horrible these people are and what they've been doing. So their plan for the Great Reset is going to backfire so bad, and this is going to turn into the greatest awakening in human history. And again, this is going to be for a season, because again, evil will rear its head again. Okay, this is not indefinite amount of time, and so evil will rear its head again in the future. But their plans for the answer is their plans for the Great Reset is going to blow up in their face, and it's going to be the greatest awakening in human history. That's what's coming.
All right, guys. So let's get ready for that. So a couple things, Andy. How do people get in touch with you to either pick up some gold, and silver, and for any questions that they may have for you?
Send us an email at info@milesfranklin.com with any questions, or to get our price list that will be far better than just about anything in North America, or as good or better than anywhere. And we update it, try to update it over twice per week. Don't look at the prices on our website. We only allow up to 10 grand. The purchases through the price list that you will get will be better. Send us an email, info@milesfranklin. Let them know that you saw us on this podcast, and we'll make sure that questions are answered. No obligation that if people find better prices, let us know. We do our best to beat it. Usually we can. We, for various reasons, don't publish those prices, but a simple email request, no obligation. No one will follow up with you unless you ask to be followed up. And the last thing is that if you don't get it right away within a few hours, check your spam. Sometimes they'll end up there, but info@milesfranklin.com is the best way to do that.
Awesome. And just let them know Stacking Surfer sent you. You saw it here. And that helps the channel out a little bit, guys. But the other thing I just want to say is my dad has bought from Andy. I've bought from Andy. I've got other, close friends that have bought from Andy. We've had great experiences and great service, and we get a great price too. So I highly recommend it.
Thank you.
Bo, how do we get in touch with you? I have your original book. It's actually signed over there. I just couldn't make it over fast enough to go get it. But and I've had the privilege of having lunch a few times with Bo, and it's been great to pick his brain. So I'm excited that we could put the two of you guys together here. How do we get in touch with you, Bo? And I think I put a link down below to your most recent PDF that people can pull there. And then I've also put links to your channels down below. But for those that may not be looking at the description, how can they reach you, Bo?
Just go to my website. It's gold, G-O-L-D, and then what we've been talking about all day. Then 2020, the year 2020, and the word forecast, gold2020forecast.com, and that's my landing page. There you can get, there's a download free PDF. Click that. So all the slides I showed today, they're all free. Just go there, hit the button. You can download all these PDFs for free. If you want my book, same thing. The book has the biblical timelines for this decade and next. It's incredible biblical math that it literally talks about this 4th of July. It talks about what happened with the day of the Pope's death. All these dates were already in there. We have dates going into next decade. It's truly incredible what the Lord has revealed. But I want to finish with, that's myself. But, in terms of preparing for this, we've done this podcast. Why? We don't need to be here. We've all got silver, okay? Why we're here is because we want the world to hear the truth. And when you hear the truth, it will hopefully awaken you, but the truth ultimately will set you free. So why we're here is why? Because Andy he's an incredible source for precious metals. He delivers extremely well, okay? But most importantly, here's a problem, okay? Everybody that that you're in your room, they're listening to this, your family members, tell me one person who went to school and they actually taught you about how to buy gold and silver. They didn't. No one knows about gold and silver, okay? So it's a niche market. It's a niche. And so unless you buy gold, if someone could give you a piece of, someone can give you a round of gold or a round of silver, and the first words out of your mouth is, hey, is that real? Because you really don't know. And so the only way to be truly comfortable with what you're doing is buy from a reputable source. I've got a bunch of sources on my website, but I'm telling you, Andy's an honest person, and he's been in this for a long time. But here's the deal. You send him finances, and you get the real stuff. You're not going to say, "Oh, is it real or should I be nervous?" No, you're getting something perfect what you paid for, and that's the essence. Because I'm telling you, there's so many scams and deals going out there, and there's so many fake coins out there. There's so much fake out there. The whole world is about fake. That's the world we live in. Welcome to the world we live in. So I'm just telling you, be wise. It's like you go to money, you work, you make money. At least put it somewhere where you know that you're literally taking some fake paper that burns in a fire, and you're putting into a God's money, gold and silver. It's written in scripture, Haggai 2:8, the silver and the gold are mine. So if you don't study history, like I've said, I'll say again, you're going to be subject to what history brought, and that's a lot of misery. Okay, so just be prepared. When you look at your bank accounts, you see a bunch of zeros, digits and zeros. That's all it is, digits and zeros. It's not money, people. Is digits and zeros. You want real money? What you just showed everybody, an ounce of gold, an ounce of silver, that's real money for 5,000 years. You don't need to put everything you have into it, but if you don't have any, you don't understand history, because history is going to prove you 1,000% wrong, because every single money ever created went to zero.
He says it doesn't burn in paper. Bill Holter, his house burned down in Texas in Bastrop. Everything was gone except a charred safe and his melted silver and gold, which he sent into my company. And we pried out of the melted plastic. We refined it, and he got 99% of melt value for his gold and silver. It was the only thing left in his entire neighborhood, and literally to the ground. So there's something to be said for what Bo just said there in practical session as well.
I agree. And for those of you that are watching, all three of us have YouTube channels. The links are down below. Subscribe, hit the bell icon that makes it so that you'll get notifications. And we continue to do podcasts throughout the week, every week. And there's a lot of information to take in. There's different ways to do this, but I love what Andy's saying. I do recommend getting sovereign coins to be able to get the US coins. There's a lot of reasons for that. I cover that on my channel. Andy covers that. I think Bo's even talked about that on some of his podcasts too. The key is to get in the game. The key is to start converting your paper money over to the real stuff. We can't give you financial advice on how fast to do that, how much to do that, or exactly what to buy. But if you call Miles Franklin, they'll help you through that. If you go to a local coin store, a lot of times they'll work with you to go through that. Be careful what you buy. If it looks too good to be true, it probably is. It's probably not real. And you don't want to buy from people that you don't have any references for. Okay. That's another big thing. My dad, when he started doing some of this on eBay, bought a bunch of fake, we don't even know what metal it's made out of, but it's not silver. So you can find good stuff on eBay, but you got to look for credible sellers and, do your research, do your homework, and start to put a strategy and a plan in place. And then from there, execute it. You don't need to have fear about this process or anything we've discussed today. All of this should be more enlightening. It should be setting you up to be excited. We're going to fix the system. We might have some pain in the process, but if you're prepared, the system will be okay. We're going to get through this stuff. So that's kind of what I want to leave it on. So God is good. He wins in the end, guys. I just want to tell you that. Okay. So we'll get there, but it gets a little rough here and there from time to time. So Andy and Bo, I want to thank you guys for coming on. And until next time, everybody, peace out.
Amen.
Bye, everybody.